How do you like your coffee? How do you order your favorite coffee in English? We're taking a look inside cafe and barista culture in this episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig. Hello and welcome to the show. If this is your first episode, you're very welcome. If you're a new listener, my name's Craig.
My name's Reza.
And together with nearly 50 years of teaching English to students, we're going to help you grow your grammar, vocalize your vocabulary, and perfect your pronunciation.
And take it all to the next level.
How are you, Reza? How's it going?
Not bad at all, Craig. Not bad. How are you?
I'm very well this week. I'm feeling great. We're going to begin with a voice message from Marcos from Argentina.
Hi Reza, hi Craig. This is Marcos from Argentina. Well, first of all, I want to wish you happy holidays. And also, I want to ask you a question. Well, imagine you are in a hotel and you are two or more people. How do you say, podemos pagar cada uno nuestra parte por separado? I don't know if you understand me, but I hope you do. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Marcos, for your message. And when Marcos sent me his message as an email attachment, he said that he had trouble with using SpeakPipe on a Samsung phone. Now, as far as I know, SpeakPipe does work if you have the latest versions of Chrome and Firefox on Android devices. So if you have an Android phone, just make sure you're using the latest version of the Chrome web browser or Firefox. And remember, iOS devices, Apple devices do not support recording audio in the browser, in the navegador. So you do need a separate iOS app from the App Store. The SpeakPipe app is free. You can download it to your iPhone or your iPad and record your voice message, or go directly on Android using Chrome and Firefox to our webpage, inglespodcast.com, and you should have no problems recording your voice message on SpeakPipe. If you do have problems, just do what Marcos did and record your message separately and send it to me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com as an email attachment in audio. Reza, any comments on Marcos' message?
Thanks very much for the message, Marcos. It's a very, very good and very important question. And you made it very clear. Your pronunciation was good. However, you did make one lexical error, your vocabulary. I wouldn't say, as you said, what would you do? How would you ask if you are two or more? Well, you could say that, but it doesn't sound very authentic. It's more typical to say, if there are two of you. There are two of you is much more typical in English. Good question. What would you say, Craig?
Well, I would say something like, excuse me, we'd like to pay separately, please. The we'd is the contraction of we would. We would like to pay separately, please. Could you think of another expression Marcos could use?
Yeah, he could say, could we have separate bills? Or in American English, separate checks. That's the same meaning.
So thanks for your question, Marcos. And we also had a comment on our website from Jose Andres Amaya from Bogota, Colombia, who said, what's the meaning of epitomize? And what's the correct pronunciation? Well, I just said it. Epitomize. Epitomize. Stress the second syllable, epitomize, as the verb. What does it mean, Reza?
It means to be a perfect example of something. For example, the questions we get from our listeners epitomize the problems that Spanish speakers have when learning English. Now, your questions are perfect examples. They're the typical examples. They're ideal to use on our podcast.
Or I could say that Reza epitomizes quality teaching.
Oh, you flatter me, Craig. You flatter me.
What does flatter mean?
Flatter is piropiar. Or I could say Craig is the epitome of an English gentleman. the word epitome, the word epitome is the noun. So epitomize is the verb and epitome is the noun. It's Epitome. And strangely, the final E is pronounced. It's not silent. Epitome.
Although sometimes Reza's examples are not very realistic. We have an email now from Fausto, who writes, Dear Craig and Reza, hello, lovely guys. Thank you, Fausto. I really like your podcast. It's pushing me to speak English. Well, we're happy about that. I'm feeling a little bit more confident with my spoken English now. I've applied for a job 1 week ago. Wait a second. What's wrong with that, Reza?
If it's a week ago, then you can't use present perfect. You have to use past simple because it's a specific time.
Right. So it should be, Fausto, I applied, past simple. I applied for a job 1 week ago in a cafe shop in London. I grew up in Ecuador and I lived around 13 years in Valencia. Oh, really?
Valencia, I presume, in Spain, not Valencia in Colombia. There is a Valencia in Colombia as well.
Well, he continues, that's fantastic to hear you both because you are there now. So obviously he knows we're in Spain. So he must have lived here for 13 years. Guys, please give me a hand. I'm struggling with coffee shop vocabulary. To struggle means luchar. I'm struggling. He has difficulties with coffee shop vocabulary. There are a lot of names that I have to learn. The customers speak very fast and sometimes too quietly. There must be a lot of noise in a cafe. And I need this vocabulary. It's about different kinds of coffee like macchiato, coffee maya, chai steamer, frothy, etc. The pastry is another one like pain au raisin, apple crumble muffins, almond croissant, pain au chocolat, etc. Then cold drinks and shakes and cold fridge, etc. I'd really appreciate it if you can help me with this. I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. Kind regards, Fausto.
Well, Fausto, before I comment on your email, let me comment on Craig's beautiful French pronunciation. I thought I was in a cafe there in Paris. Pain au raisin, pain au chocolat. I thought it was a Parisian cafe. I'm very impressed, Craig.
Merci beaucoup, mon ami. So, coffee, let's not change to a French podcast now. Coffee and beverages. Well, let's look at some names that Fausto might use and hear and need in a cafe. And most of these names for coffees and beverages come from Italian.
Stop you a second. What is a beverage?
A beverage is any kind of drink. It can be alcoholic, although if it is, you'd probably see alcoholic beverages in a supermarket, for example. So a beverage is a general name, a general term for any kind of drink. Tea is a beverage, coffee is a beverage, Coca-Cola is a beverage, soda water is a beverage.
Quite a formal word.
Yes.
Yeah. You might see it written on a cafe menu, but you certainly wouldn't say to your friends who come to your house, would you like a beverage? They'd think you were being a bit silly. You'd say, would you like a drink?
So, as I said, most of these expressions and names and words come from Italian, and they may not be difficult for Spanish people to recognize. For example, solo. Cafe solo is solo, a single shot of espresso.
Or if you want a double shot, 2 shots of espresso, that's a doppio.
So I assume that doppio in Italian means double. Macchiato, espresso macchiato, is an espresso with a minimal amount, a very, very small amount of steamed milk on top. Now, to steam milk is to put steam through the milk, as you see in the cafe. You see people doing, the barista does that in the coffee shop. And macchiato means mark or stain, or a mancha of milk on top of the espresso.
A macchiato in an English-speaking country, although it's an Italian word, strangely, is the closest you're going to get to a cortado. in Spain. But it isn't exactly the same, is it, Craig? I trust your opinion because you know your coffee.
I know my coffee, and I travel quite a bit. So when I do travel outside of Spain, my way of ordering coffee, my preference is to order a macchiato, but with the milk separately. So then I can add extra milk, or just order a macchiato, and some cafes have milk on the side separately where you get your sugar. Sometimes you see a flask of milk and you can add more milk to make it a cortado.
Yeah.
So yeah, but in my personal taste, I do need more milk in a macchiato to make it like a cortado.
I'm exactly the same.
Strong.
I prefer a cortado to a macchiato. Same as Craig. It has a little bit more milk.
Yeah. What's a ristretto? Espresso ristretto.
Well, that Italian word ristretto means restricted. So it's made with less water.
So it's even stronger.
Even stronger than a macchiato. So it produces a thicker espresso with more flavor.
An espresso lungo, Lungo. Remember, all of these words can be found in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/193. But an espresso lungo is made with more water, not less. So with a lungo, you're getting a larger espresso.
And of course, we haven't mentioned the word espresso, of course, which means quick. Mm-hmm. So originally, the Italians, when they came up with this type of espresso, they wanted a quick coffee, a quick one, a quickie.
And I sometimes make the mistake, so be careful. Don't write espresso with an X, because sometimes I make the mistake of writing EXPRESSO. It's ES, so it's espresso.
Now, Craig, an important thing for some people in their coffee is froth, F-R-O-T-H, or foam, F-O-A-M. What are those things?
That's milk which has been made thick and foamy, which is con espuma, with hot steam. How do you say steam?
Vapor.
Vapor. Quite difficult to say that word. Froth. Froth. The F and the R together. Bit difficult, even for native speakers sometimes. Froth.
And if there's a lot of froth, it's frothy.
Frothy. It's a very
strange word.
And it could be frothy coffee, which is
very difficult to pronounce.
Try to say that quickly 3 times.
Craig, for you, what's a cafe latte?
Well, it's a coffee that's made by pouring milk. Pour, P-O-U-R, is echar. So pouring milk into the espresso. Cafe latte, espresso with milk.
So how does that differ then to an espresso macchiato?
There's more milk.
Uh-huh.
So it's a weaker coffee. It's more like a café con leche.
Do you like cafe latte?
I like it a little stronger. So my preferred coffee, being awkward, is somewhere between a latte and a macchiato. That's my ideal strength of coffee.
Maybe a cappuccino?
Yes, that's what I usually order when I can't be bothered or it's not possible to have the milk separately, the hot milk separately. So I would usually order a cappuccino because that's kind of in the middle, isn't it, of strength.
But there's a typical characteristic of a cappuccino, though. It's a shot or two of espresso, but then it's filled half with steamed milk and half foam milk. That's an important characteristic to be able to call it a real cappuccino. Half steamed, half foamed milk.
So it's 1/3 coffee, 1/3 milk, un tercio, and 1/3 milk foam. That's what I like, but you can have 1 shot or 2 shots. So 1 hit of coffee or 2 hits of coffee. I prefer 2.
Me too.
Which makes it stronger.
For a cappuccino,
So that's my preferred drink, a cappuccino with 2 shots.
Well, the next one is my number one preferred if I'm in the UK, which is a flat white. That's what I asked for. And if they don't do flat white, then I get a cappuccino. Mm-hmm. A flat white is like a cappuccino, but with a similar amount of foam to a latte. And in my opinion, it's the closest equivalent you'll find to a café con leche in Spain when you're not in Spain.
Yeah.
If you ask for café con leche in England, they won't know what you're talking about. But ask for a flat white and you get something fairly close to a café con leche, right?
Well, I've never drunk a flat white in the UK because when I go back to the UK to visit, I usually stay with friends and we're usually served that horrible, disgusting instant coffee from a jar, which is not on this list because it's not real coffee, in my opinion. So the only time I've ever had flat white coffee was in Australia a few years ago, and I found it very weak. I found it very weak the way they prepare it in cafes in Australia. So the latte in Australia was stronger than the flat white.
It's definitely the reverse in the UK.
That's interesting.
In the UK, a flat white is definitely stronger than a latte.
Okay.
I never have latte. Far too weak for me in the UK. So that's interesting. Australians are doing it differently to British people because...
Almost like they're doing it upside down, isn't it?
Upside down, yeah. Since they're down under, everything's the other way around.
What's an Americano?
An Americano is, to start with, not what Americans traditionally drink. I repeat, not what Americans traditionally drink. It's a shot or two of espresso that's been poured into a cup, which is then filled, with hot water. So you do the espresso first, then you add more hot water. So Americans don't usually do that.
But that makes it quite weak, doesn't it? It's weak. A long drink. It's quite a long drink. It's largo.
Yeah. And I don't know why they call it Americano because it's not typical in the United States.
So North Americans tend to drink, usually, drip coffee, D-R-I-P. To drip, the verb is gotear. Drip coffee or filter coffee. And it's made by using a coffee filter. And you pass hot water, you pour hot water through the filter with the coffee, and then it drips down into the cup. Do you like that kind of coffee?
Not really, no. But when I grew up, we're talking about the 70s and 80s, still in the United Kingdom and Ireland, it was quite hard to get a decent coffee. And that was about the best thing available, which wasn't instant coffee. Mm-hmm. That was considered the best you could get. And it was only much later that proper barista coffee from the proper Italian or Spanish machines arrived in the 90s or even later, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. I don't typically like the drip filter coffee, especially the drip coffee they serve in diners and regular cafes in the States. Although you can get good quality drip and filter coffee in some specialized coffee shops in America. Very popular in recent years has been the French press, which is a device for making coffee where the hot water mixes together with the ground coffee.
What's ground coffee?
Café molido. So the verb is to grind the coffee, and the adjective ground coffee. The coffee grounds, the grounds are the pieces of coffee, the very, very small pieces of coffee, are then removed from the coffee by a filter plunger which goes down. So if you imagine pouring water and coffee in a glass jug and then pushing down with a metal filter that presses all of the very, very small coffee pieces to the bottom of the pot. So you could also call this maybe a plunger pot in some places, or cafetiere sometimes in the Italian way.
Or cafetiere, the French way as well.
Cafetiere. Yeah.
Both ways, yeah.
So that's the French press method of making coffee.
Yeah. I used to make that quite a bit when I was younger because I considered it better than the coffee I could get outside when I was a teenager.
I think it's better than drip coffee, but it depends on the quality of the coffee.
Yeah. But now I must admit I prefer getting proper barista coffee from the machines. But it was the best thing at the time, was the cafetiere.
In your opinion, in Valencia, if you go to a normal bar, like a neighborhood bar by the barrio, do you get good coffee here?
Usually, yeah. Although I think the quality has deteriorated. Or maybe my taste has changed. But I think that coffee used to be made generally better in Spain than it is these days.
I would agree with you. And I think it has deteriorated because bars are making more money, want to make more money because of the financial crisis. So they're charging the same or maybe more, but they're buying inferior coffee.
Yeah.
So their gastos, what they're spending, their expenses are lower and they make more profit. So I agree with you. Not in all, but in some places, the coffee's worse. No.
I'm so glad you said that. I thought it was my imagination and I was
No.
just getting old and difficult to please,
Old and grumpy.
you know? And another
Mala leche.
well, that's probably true as well. I also think that in quite a few bars now in Spain, something happens which never happened when I first arrived 20 years ago. Sometimes the coffee's too weak for me, and that was unthinkable 20 years ago.
Because they're not putting as much coffee in, which also saves them money.
Yeah, but you notice in the taste, I think it started about 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe a bit longer, to do with the crisis. Yeah, they wanted to make more money or to increase their profit margins. And the coffee's not quite as strong in some bars now. But when I first arrived in Spain, I found the coffee very strong.
Yeah, and very good.
Very good. So I'm surprised now that it's a bit watery. That's aguado in some places. Another thing is I've got used now to never would I make coffee or tea with unfiltered water.
Me neither. It's got a chlorine taste.
Got a chlorine taste. Yeah, the la lejía, like chlorine, the bleach. But I reckon in most average bars and restaurants, they don't filter it, I would say. They're just using it straight from the tap, el grifo. And because I've got used to the filter, I now notice when it's not filtered.
We use Bethoya water here in Valencia because apparently it has less cal, it has less lime scale in it, so it doesn't destroy the coffee machine as much. The taste is okay, so it makes good coffee. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't use water from the tap, even if I passed it through a water filter. It still, to me, has a sort of a chlorine taste.
Yeah. Now, Craig, another type of coffee, which I've never really liked, but you might, I don't know, is mocha. Is it mocha or mocha? How would you say it? Mocha.
I'd say mocha, but perhaps both pronunciations are possible. M-O-C-H-A. That's espresso with chocolate and also steamed or frothed milk. And on top, some whipped cream. Un poco de nata.
Oh, and what's whipped?
Whipped is where you beat the cream. To beat the cream means you move it very quickly, very fast, and then it becomes very light and creamy and fluffy and very tasty. I don't, it's too sweet for me and with the chocolate. And I like my chocolate as the pure drug on its own, maybe separate with a coffee, but separate. So I don't like it in the coffee.
I totally agree. And there's nothing better to drink with solid chocolate than a coffee. Would you agree? It's the best thing you can drink with chocolate. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if the coffee is very, very strong, maybe some gaseoso, some fizzy water.
And why is this frothy coffee with the whipped cream, why is it called mocha?
Can you say frothy coffee again?
Frothy coffee.
Why is it? Sorry, what was it? What was the question?
Why is it called mocha?
Well, apparently it comes from the mocha coffee beans, which were named after a Yemen port, the port of Mocha in Yemen. That's where the name comes from. Did you know that?
I didn't. No, I didn't until you told me about it today.
I didn't know until I researched for this podcast on Google either, so we've both learned something. There's another beverage made with ice and usually containing coffee called frappe, which, is that a French word? F-R-A-P-P-E?
Yes. I think it means beaten. To frappe is to beat something, isn't it? As you said earlier, to mix it around quickly.
Because I understand the meaning as being crushed ice, which means ice in very small pieces.
Yeah. Even if that coffee was invented in France, I'm not sure if it was, it may have been, but apparently, a lot of people will confirm this for you. The best frappe, where do you get the best frappe? Most experts agree.
Is it France?
Greece.
Really?
Greece is the place for frappe.
Didn't know that.
Yep. So if you want a good frappe, go to a Greek restaurant. Ask for it there.
Also, Greek coffee is very good.
Yeah.
Chai, C-H-A-I. That's a name of coffee I think you might be familiar with. What does chai?
Well, chai is just a word in India and some other countries, which means tea. If you say chai in India, you're asking for tea.
And how do they typically prepare it?
Well, if you ask for chai in a European coffee shop, you're going to get a spiced, that means con especias, Indian tea, and it'll often have ginger, jengibre, cardamom, clavos, cinnamon, that's canela, sugar, milk, and tea. So it's spicy and sweet. But in fact, the original meaning of the word chai in India simply means tea. But this is the European adaptation of that word.
And I think one of Fausto's questions, or one of the words he mentioned in his email, was a chai steamer that he has to serve in his cafe. A chai steamer, steamer, is chai made with steamed milk foam. So a chai, but with foamed milk.
Craig, decaf, which is short for decaffeinated coffee or tea with the caffeine removed, is becoming more and more popular these days. Do you ever drink decaf?
Yes, but I have a problem with decaf tea. It doesn't have any flavor. I can't seem to make it strong enough. So I do drink decaf coffee if I want a coffee in the evening before I go to bed. But decaf tea, no, not really. What about you?
Neither, I'm afraid.
You don't like tea? So if you want a hot drink, a hot beverage before you go to bed, what do you drink?
A herbal tea is what I'll probably have if
so
it's
it doesn't
just
have
before I go to
caffeine.
bed. What you call infusión in Spanish. So it's an infusion made with leaves, hojas, and hot water. You could argue it isn't really tea. That's why we call it herbal tea. And instead of typical tea plants, it's made from herbs. And it's naturally free of caffeine.
Just one quick point on pronunciation. The American English pronunciation of herb is herb, so they do not pronounce the H. So instead of herbal tea with that H sound, you would hear in the US herbal tea.
Do you ever drink herbal tea?
Hardly ever. No, I really don't like it. The herbal teas that we have here are not my cup of tea. If something's not your cup of tea, you don't like it. But you could say that about anything, not only about drinks. You could say, oh, horror films are not my cup of tea, or trekking in the mountains isn't my cup of tea. I don't like it. And Fausto asked specifically about coffee Maya, Maya, which seems to be a type of coffee produced by a company based in Austin, Texas, called the Ruta Maya Coffee Company. And I've put a link to their website in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/193. And there's one more thing in Fausto's email that I checked on the internet. Frothy, F-R-O-F-F-E-E, which I hadn't heard of. The frothy coffee, which seems to be iced coffee from Israel. So it seems to be an Israeli frozen iced coffee called frothy. And I didn't know that. So thanks, Fausto, for educating me. And there is more information in a link that's also in the show notes for Fausto or anybody else who, like me, is very interested in coffee. It's a barista guide, and it's baristaguide.com, and there's lots of vocabulary, explanations, and useful information about coffee in English on that website. Go to inglespodcast.com/193.
Craig, there is one other type of coffee which I've never tried, but I know you really enjoy your coffee. We could call Craig a coffee connoisseur, a French word. Someone who really connaître, someone who really knows what they're talking about is a connoisseur.
Or a coffee snob, which is...
No, well, that doesn't make it sound so positive. What do you know about civet coffee? That's C-I-V-E-T.
Is that the one where it's chosen by the animals, like foxes or other animals choose the best coffee beans to eat, the ripest coffee beans, because ripe means they're ready to be picked, they're ready to be taken from the coffee plant, and the animals know this. They sniff them, they smell them, they know it, and then they eat them, and then it comes out in their feces.
Yes.
And then it's taken from the shit and cleaned and then processed as really good, expensive coffee because the coffee beans were ripe for picking.
That's exactly it. You say very expensive. Indeed, it is the most expensive coffee on earth. The most exclusive, most expensive coffee on earth has come out of an animal's bottom. It has digested it and it has defecated it It's called civet coffee because the civet is a creature which lives in Indonesia.
Is it a kind of fox?
Kind of similar to a fox.
Fox is toro.
Yeah, something like that. Not quite.
Okay.
But it's probably related to foxes. And bizarrely, it's an animal which lives in coffee. People think it's a very human thing. No, this animal loves coffee. It, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it wants coffee. And it eats it and it passes through its system. And then it gets washed and sold in very, very, very exclusive coffee shops and costs a fortune.
I bet the animal moves a lot and has really big eyes and can't sleep at night from the caffeine.
So some people call it, as a kind of nickname, crap coffee. It's kind of funny because if something's not very good, you say it's crap. Yeah. Crap is a slang word for feces, let's say, or what passes through your bottom. So people say, "Oh, that's a crap coffee." It's not very good, but this literally is a crap coffee.
You could say this podcast is crap, so it's no good.
So the best coffee in the world is crap coffee.
Fausto also asked about cakes and pastries. Reza, what's a pain au raisin? Is that good pronunciation?
Oh, I envy you. I only wish I could pronounce it like that. Pain au raisin or something like that. So pain is bread, isn't it? Au raisin with raisins. Bread with raisins. So it's a spiral pastry. Pastry is hojaldre, and it's often eaten for breakfast in France, but now in Europe, in other countries as well, in Spain, in Britain particularly. And it's sometimes called an escargot or snail because it looks like a snail because it's a spiral shape.
Do you like them?
From time to time. I would probably love them if I could get a decent one.
Yeah.
But in most coffee shops, they are crap. And I'm not talking about crap coffee now. I'm talking about not
really,
very good
really
crap.
Bad. Yeah.
They're industrial rubbish, full of gelatin and other things which are probably not supposed to be on them.
And many cafes sell them like 2 or 3 days after they've been made just to make some money. I mean, I think they're nice when they're well cooked. They're fresh, maybe 2 or 3 hours out of the oven. And if you get the good fortune, the good luck to go to Paris or France, you will get really good pain au raisins if you go to bakeries in the morning and they're fresh and they're well made. They're nice. But usually it's not something I would order here in Spain.
Another thing which is often sold in coffee shops in the UK is apple crumble muffins.
What's a muffin?
So a muffin's a small cake, kind of like a Magdalena, but the American word for Magdalena, but it's a bit bigger than a Magdalena if you want to be technical about it. So an apple crumble muffin is like a big Magdalena with pieces of apple on it. And crumble means, if pastry is crumble, it means that it breaks up easily into parts.
Yeah, it disintegrates.
It crumbles.
But anything can crumble, can't it? The plaster on the wall, yeso can crumble.
Mm-hmm. Or metaphorically, power can crumble. At the end of the Roman Empire, their power crumbled. It slowly disappeared into nothing. Now, croissant, is my pronunciation acceptable for Craig? Croissant.
Croissant. You're the guy who studies French.
Well, I did. I'm having a slight break at the minute, but I'll be getting back to it. So there are many types of croissant. One favorite these days is almond croissant. Do you like almonds, almendras?
I like almonds, but I don't like almond croissants.
Same here. Love almonds, love croissants, but not together.
Chocolate, yes. Or plain croissant dipped in coffee. To dip is to put the pastry inside the coffee, and then it soaks up like a sponge. It soaks up the flavour of the coffee. But almonds, no, I'm not a fan.
I don't really like dipping croissants, but I love dipping muffins. But not croissants.
Like on a spoon, you put a bit of muffin on a spoon and then, that's
or
nice.
Sometimes I just take a risk and do it with my fingers, and very often it drops into the coffee and you pay the price.
Or you burn your finger.
But you've got to take that risk.
Let's move on to simply the best. My favorite cake or pastry, pain au chocolat, which is the typical French pastry like a croissant, but with chocolate inside. When they're made well, they're fresh, They are absolutely the best.
Fausto, don't be surprised if people in your coffee shop in England don't say pain au chocolat or pain au raisin, because some people don't really know how to say it in French, and they don't need to, and they might just say, can I have that pastry with chocolate on it? You will often get that.
Or maybe, can I have that chocolate croissant?
Chocolate croissant, or can I have that thing there with the chocolate on top? Because a lot of people don't want to sound foolish because they don't want to mispronounce the word. So don't be surprised if you get that in your coffee shop. Another thing which you often find is a Danish pastry, or sometimes just called a Danish. It's not a Danish person, it's a Danish pastry. And it's a multi-layered, that means muchas capas, of sweet pastry. And quite often it has raisins or things on the top. Very, very popular in the United States, yeah?
Yeah, they're a bit sweet for me. I don't like them that much. They are a bit too sweet, but they're very popular, Danish pastries.
Now, earlier we mentioned muffins, but I'm proud of my British and Irish tradition. For me, give me a bun any day. A bun is more or less the same as a muffin, but not exactly, eh? Not exactly. For me, a bun, where I come from, is una magdalena, but the traditional British cupcake or bun is smaller than the American one. More or less the same, but smaller. And in America also, they put a lot more icing, la guinda. An American cupcake or muffin can have a lot of icing on the top, whereas a British one has a lot less or no icing at all. You can just have a plain bun, something my mother bakes a lot.
But is a bun always sweet, or can you have savoury buns?
There are savoury buns as well, so it's a very confusing word. In America, if they say the word bun, it's going to be a type of bread. It might be a bun for a burger, for example. So that'd be un bollo.
A burger bun.
But from where I come from, a bun is a sweet bun. What about where you come from? You come from near London. Would you use the word bun there to mean Magdalena?
I'm surprised you associated it with a Magdalena, like a muffin or a cupcake, because I would think of a bun as like a bread roll.
Okay.
Maybe sweet, maybe savoury, but definitely that shape and that texture of bread, and not necessarily the texture of a cupcake or a Magdalena, which is more like a cake texture. So for me, bun is like bread, but maybe sweet, maybe savoury.
So when you were growing up, when you were a child, if you wanted una Magdalena in the London area, what did you ask for?
Cupcake.
A cupcake.
A cupcake.
Okay.
Definitely. Just one clarification. Be careful of the spelling, because bun, B-U-N, is bollo, and bum, B-U-M, is culo. So don't confuse those two.
Culo. Or vagabundo in America, of course.
Of course.
A vagabond can be a bum.
What's a tray bake? I haven't heard that word before.
You're joking.
Seriously. Tray bake?
When was the last time you were in the UK?
6-7 years ago.
Okay, that explains it then. Okay. Tray bakes are all the rage at the moment in the UK.
What does all the rage mean? They're popular.
Very, very popular. They're what you see more than anything else. They're the most popular thing in coffee shops these days. In the UK, you're very, very, very unlikely to see one in Spain. Mm-hmm. They're not popular at all in Spain. So what is a tray bake? Well, let's divide it up into the two parts. Tray, bake. Bandeja, hornear. Mm-hmm. And that's what it is. It's a sweet dish which is baked on a large, usually rectangular, tray. Then cut into individual pieces. So there'll be one large thing, which is then cut into individual pieces, and the individual pieces are served. I'll give you an example of one, and it's going to blow my mind if you've never heard of this, Craig. I'm gobsmacked. You've never heard of
What does gobsmacked mean?
Very, very surprised. You've never heard of a caramel square?
Yes, and now you've described tray bake, I know what it is and I've seen them, but I didn't know that had that label, that name of tray bake. But I know what you mean. They bring them out of the oven on the tray, they cut them into squares and sell them separately.
Right.
Yep.
You've probably eaten a caramel square, have you? Or maybe even a chocolate square?
It's been a few years, but yes.
Ever eaten a brownie?
Ago. Oh, of course.
That's a tray bake.
Is it?
Yeah, of course it is. You bake it on a tray and then cut it into pieces.
Okay.
A brownie is a type of tray bake.
I love brownies.
A tray bake is a type of pastry. It's a subcategory of pastry. But they're the most popular thing at the minute in UK coffee shops, tray bakes.
I'm sure Fausto has served a few tray bakes then in his job in the UK. We've got one or two expressions that I'm sure Fausto knows, but let's revise them anyway. Something useful when you're serving customers in English. Are you being served? You want to ask if the person is being attended to. So, are you being served? Or you could just say, may I help you? May I help you, sir? Or may I help you, madam? Or can I help you? Any others, Reza?
If you were working in Belfast, but you're not, but if you were working in Belfast, you could say, are you getting? But don't say that in London because people say, what are you talking about, mate?
Can you say that slowly?
I'll do it quick first.
Okay.
You's getting? And then I'll break it down.
You's getting?
Yeah. I'll break it down into are yous, plural, which doesn't really exist. Getting. Use would be the plural of you, but it's not correct. But people say it. Plural of you, use. And are you getting? Getting meaning served. So are yous getting? Are you being attended to? Are you being served? And it gets shortened to you's getting.
Is that polite?
It's not really polite, but it is used in Belfast in bars, in shops. People say you's getting to mean are you being
very
served?
Useful if you're going to Belfast.
But utterly useless everywhere else, unfortunately.
You could say, what can I get you, sir? Or what can I get you, madam? Or what can I get for you is also a nice way of attending a customer.
And whenever you have attended the customer and they're leaving or they're going to take their seat, you can say, have a nice day. And who knows, you might get a tip.
If you are working in the cafe, restaurant, bar industry like Fausto in the UK or in an English-speaking country, you may be interested in our course for Hostelería y Restauración. It's only €3.99, which is about the price of a coffee in Starbucks. So if you are interested in improving your English, typically in these industries, there's a link in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/193, and the course of Inglés para Hostelería is in PDF and MP3 format. How do you order your coffee, Reza? What's your favorite coffee when you go into a bar in Spain?
Depends. Sometimes I want café con leche, sometimes cortado. So it depends what mood I'm in.
And what about your tea? With milk? Black?
I never ever order tea in Spain because I'm so fussy about my tea that I simply don't trust them to make it to my standards.
And you make it in a teapot, is that right, at home?
Yes.
You've made me tea in a teapot before.
I do. Even when I'm on my own and I'm only going to drink one cup, I put it in a teapot. Yes. I'm very fussy about my tea.
And you like it strong, yeah?
Depends what tea I'm having, but I like strong tea. Things like breakfast tea, which tends to be a strong blend, yeah, particularly in the morning. But in the evening, I might have a milder tea like a Darjeeling or an Earl Grey or Ceylon.
Would you put milk in Darjeeling?
No.
Okay.
No. But in Ceylon, usually, yeah, a little bit of milk in Ceylon, but not too much.
So do you drink different types of tea depending on the time of day, or do you mix them depending on how you feel?
Yep. I mix them, and I would never have a strong tea. I would never have a breakfast tea in the evening because it tends to be a strong blend.
Because of the caffeine? Or?
Yeah, because of the caffeine, yeah. What about you, Craig? How do you like your tea?
With milk and a little sugar and strong English tea. And thank you very much for bringing me some tea back from Northern Ireland. I love that tea. So, yeah, I'm a bit fussy about my tea. I also, like you, I don't order tea in bars and restaurants in Spain. I tend to make it at home almost always.
I forgot to mention something which will make many Spanish listeners and perhaps Latin American listeners laugh as well. I don't use 99% of Spanish milk in my tea. It's not good enough. I use fresh milk, leche fresca.
Yeah, me too.
UHT, ultra heat treated, is just not good enough. Sorry. It has to be leche fresca, which they now stock in Spain, But let's be honest, mostly for foreigners. Although a few Spanish people buy it. But for me, it's essential for tea and preferable for coffee as well.
Yeah.
I will accept UHT milk in coffee if I must, but I prefer to be leche fresca, fresh milk. But in tea, no way, Jose. I'm not taking it.
We're quite fussy, aren't we? How do you like your coffee? Are you a coffee person or are you a tea person? And what's your favourite snack with your mid-morning or mid-afternoon beverage? We'd like to hear from you, so why don't you now practice your English and send us a voice message? You can reach us on SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/Inglés podcast. And today we're recording episode 193, which means we only have 7 more episodes before episode 200. And of course, we'd like to celebrate episode 200 with you. So we've decided to change the format of episode 200, and we would like you to ask us a question. You can ask us anything, but we prefer you don't ask us about English. So please, no grammar questions, no vocabulary questions, no coffee questions, and no pronunciation questions. Send us a voice message and ask us a question about anything you like, and we will answer it on episode 200. If you would prefer not to practice your English and record your voice, send me an email to craig@inglespodcast.com.
Or to me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And before we go, a quick thank you to all our Patreon sponsors. Many thanks to our gold sponsor, Bruno, who takes you around Copenhagen with his walking tour company. And he does that in English or Spanish, whatever you prefer. You can find his service on CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. And if you're going to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, or if you indeed live there in Brazil and you'd like to know more about Rio, you can go around the favelas with Bruno and his guides. It's a safe tour. They know the area very well. And it also is a way to give back to the community to improve on their daily needs. And I'll link to a documentary on CNN with Bruno's walking tours of the favelas. Also, thank you to our other wonderful Patreons. Who are they, Reza?
Thanks to Beatriz, Pedro, Maite, Lara, Rafa Banthels, Nestor from nestorgm.com. That's Luces Extrañas podcast. Maria Gervati, Lorena, Sara Jarabo, Carlos Garrido, Mamen, Juan Leiva, Corey Finneran from ivnv.com podcast. Miren, Jose Luis, Agus, Mariel, Manuel García, Jorge Jiménez, Raúl López, Rafael, Manuel Tarazona, José Manuel, Juan Carlos Rodado, Pilar Martínez, Ganbate Blog, Ana Giovanna, Igor Garmendia, and our latest patron, Ignacio, or our latest patrons, I should say, Ignacio Espona and Kieran. And don't forget, Bruno, our gold sponsor. Thank you very much to all of you.
And many of you have been asking for full transcriptions for the podcast. So if you'd like to join our Patreons for as little as $1 per month, that's less than a price of a good coffee, you can get instant access to recent transcriptions done by Angelica Bello from Madrid at patreon.com/inglespodcast. Or you can go directly to the website for free transcriptions done by Patricia Alonso. And we've got 131 to 142. That's episodes 131 to 142 and episodes 1 to 14 on the website at no charge and free to you. Reza, what's next week?
On next week's episode, we've got the 9 parts of English speech.
Is it 9 or 8?
All will be revealed in next week's episode.
You'll have to listen to see if it's 9 parts of speech or 8 parts of speech. So join us next week. Thanks for listening. And it's goodbye from me.
And bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. We're going to help you grow your grammar, vocalize your vocabulary, and
take it all to the next level.
Perfect your pronunciation.
Oh, I forgot the pronunciation. Wow.
I forgot. That's why I was looking at you.
Shall we do it again?
Okay.
Sorry about that.